Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. On today's show, the Sikh family of the recently murdered Bishnoi gang victim speak out. Did the system fail Harjit Singh Dada? The evils of the caste system continue as we look at the story of a Dalit woman treated worse than an animal by police, only to find out she was innocent after all. The ongoing war of words between India and Pakistan continues as Pakistan released a 20-page dossier detailing India's propaganda lies. And the first 100 days of the Trump administration are reviewed and whether they've been good or bad for Sikhs in the United States. All this and more on today's show, but joining me as always for Perspectives is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus, and I hope all is well on that side of the pond, and I also hope that our viewers are all doing well today. Thanks for tuning in for yet another episode. We hope you'll enjoy it. Back to you, Angus.
Indeed, and James and I together will be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world. And of course, as usual, we'll take a look at loads of great comments at the end of the show, which have been filling up below the video, so thank you as always for those. Right, James, let's get underway. What are you going to start us off with this morning?
Well, let's take a look at another clear indicator of the caste system not going away in India anytime soon in the way that the minorities are treated there. Now, recently, actually, as of last week, a young Dalit woman was a housekeeper in a home, and the homekeepers, or the homeowners, found that there was a necklace with some kind of a pendant that was missing, and they contacted the police. Now, the police came after her and not only searched her home, they called her into the police station, they searched her there, then took her to her home, they searched the home, then back to the police station where they locked her in a cell. They did a strip search to ensure she wasn't hiding it inside of any body cavities, and then locked her in a cell with no food and no water until the next day when they actually found out the homeowner found the missing pendant and necklace. It was in the home. It had just been misplaced, had absolutely nothing to do with this housekeeper. So then she was released, of course, from jail. But the way that she was treated, you wouldn't treat animals. They wouldn't allow her to sleep. When she asked for water, they told her to get it out of the toilet bowl. And different accusations were made. Excuse me. Now, the young lady filed a complaint against the police department, and it went nowhere. So she took the next steps and took the complaint higher up, but also to the media. And amazingly, once the media caught on to the story, of course, then people started to get suspended in the police station, including a superintendent. Now, this is just another symbol and clearly evident example of how the caste system works in India. If you are what they consider lower on the caste system, and for example, here with the minorities, that you don't have the same rights. You do not have the right to be presumed innocent when there was no evidence that she had actually taken the necklace and pendant to start with. It was just based on accusations by the homeowner, who again had just misplaced the items, and yet she was treated just horrifically as a result for doing her job and not doing anything wrong, Angus. Again, just a disgusting example of how the police mistreat people in India.
I think it's tragic in so many ways. It's, of course, for this poor woman who suffered what she suffered, but it also, for India as a nation, this is just such an embarrassing, shameful story once again, just highlighting this caste system, which is supposedly illegal. It is supposedly not allowed to exist in India, yet it is writ large every day. These poor lower caste people, whether men or women, are always treated as not just second-class citizens, but third-class citizens. And of course, we often talk about how women are treated in India, particularly women of lower castes. And they are treated, like this story, literally like animals sometimes. And the police, one wonders if this lady had been from a higher caste, from an upper caste family, if she would have been treated the same way. I think we all know the answer to that. And again, even though, despite the fact it is supposedly written into the Constitution, although watch my podcast where we actually analyse the constitutional clause relating to the caste system, and clearly the caste system is not written out in the Constitution, despite what the general population seem to think. It is so still inherent in Indian society, and it is being practised on a daily basis. And this poor lady had to obviously fight tooth and nail with her family to try and, gain simple justice. Now, the whole point of law and the rule of law, particularly in any democratic nation, is it is there to treat every single individual as equal. Nobody is above the law. That is the simple fundamental fact of the rule of law in any normal democracy. Yet in India, the law is practiced differently. People are treated unequally in the eyes of the law in India. Again, the examples come out every day where if you're upper caste, the law treats you in one way, and we've actually talked in the past about stories of high-profile upper caste system, upper caste individuals who've managed to get away literally with murder, and often for years on end. And yet, you look at the average Dalit, whose life is pretty miserable on a day-to-day basis. If they even slightly broach the law, the full force of the law comes down on them, and they are treated, like this poor lady, like animals. So unfortunately, this is one of the key fundamental pieces of social injustice that the Sikh community has stood up for literally since the days of the first Guru. This is why Sikhi existed, because they recognised the caste system for the evil that it is. And this is why they've become, the Sikh community has become an enemy, an existential threat to this Brahmins, this upper caste rule of India. And it's about time that the general population of India just woke up to the fact that they are living within this prison of their own making. These bars that surround them, these invisible bars of the caste system, are containing them within their own prison. And the only real benefiters of this system are the upper caste, the Brahmins, those who are actually ruling India. Everybody else is a slave under the same system. And it's about time that people in India woke up to this fact and freed themselves from this Brahmanical control, and therefore India could actually succeed in the future. And each individual in India would have a much better chance of succeeding in their own lives, James.
Absolutely, Angus. And, it's just another example as to the corruption and the unfair treatment of people in India. The caste system is still prevalent, and there is still a lot of concern by human rights activists. Now, we know there's a lot of human rights abuses in the north, whether it's, up in Kashmir, whether it's in Punjab, different regions of the country, and this happens to be down in the southwest of the country. So again, it is nationwide. It's not isolated to certain regions. It is a national problem in India. Now, as we look at national problems in law enforcement, it looks as though there are fingers being pointed at law enforcement and first responders here in Canada in relation to the death of a Mississauga businessman who was executed just the other day. Now, his family is speaking out, so we'll take a look at that video, and then we'll discuss some of the major concerns that I saw in the video and what I see from various points of information that are coming out right now on this case. So let's first take a look, and we'll see the brave daughter of the gentleman killed, and she is very brave speaking out. So let's take a look at her comments, and then again, we'll come back to the story and look at some of the issues I have concern with.
The reason why I'm doing this interview is because I want justice for my dad.
The heartbroken daughter of Harjeet Singh Dada says her father is the man who was killed in a hail of gunfire just steps away from G&G Trucking Solutions, a transportation safety and insurance company the family has been running for almost 15 years. The 51-year-old was in the parking lot just before noon on Wednesday when he was ambushed by suspects lying in wait.
It took us 5 minutes on hold. Then our call was answered. My dad was dead to then.
Gurleen Dada spoke to our sister station Omni News and says her father was being targeted by extortionists from India, along with other South Asian business owners right across the country.
They asked for $500,000 from my dad, but my dad denied it. My dad said he's not going to pay a single penny because he works for it.
And while Peel's homicide unit has not yet released a motive for the murder, family claims these threats were reported to police and were not taken seriously.
No one can bring my dad back anymore. He was brutally shot and killed in broad daylight. Just because our government and our police officers were not able to provide the security that my dad deserved.
The victim's son also spoke out on social media, calling his father a devoted family man and law-abiding Canadian citizen, writing, "My father did not deserve this. He lived an honest life, yet those who came to harm him were armed with illegal weapons, operating with complete disregard for the law and seemingly without fear of consequences."
We need to have more strict laws for criminals like this. They shouldn't be let out on bail.
Police have not yet publicized information on suspects, but witnesses told City News that a black Dodge Challenger pulled into the parking lot and at least 15 shots were fired at close range, hitting Dada several times in the back.
He was a pillar for the whole community. Any problem that any person had, he was always there to help them.
Now we asked Peel Police about those extortion threats and have been told that the homicide unit is investigating every avenue, and to protect the integrity of the investigation, no further details will be provided. In Mississauga, Shauna Hunt, City News.
Whenever people needed his help, he was always there. Even for me, he was my hero.
Gurleen Dada is devastated after her father, Harjit Singh Dada, was murdered.
He was a pillar to the community, and he always fought for justice and the people, whoever.
On Wednesday, around the noon hour, her 51-year-old father was gunned down in a hail of bullets as he got out of his car in the parking lot outside his Mississauga trucking business. The family believes the murder is connected to an extortion call Dada received in December 2023.
They were cussing at him, and when they were cussing at him, they told him that they either want $500,000 or either they will kill him.
And what did he say?
He said he will not give the money. And he said after that he went to the cops.
Around the same time, police here in Peel Region announced the creation of an extortion investigative task force after a rash of extortions involving members of the South Asian business community.
A lot of my dad's friends got the phone calls, and a lot of his friends' offices were also shot at.
Dada's daughter says her family lived in fear and an arrest was never made in her father's extortion case.
We should have gotten the security that they said they were going to provide us, which we did not get provided with.
Peel police say the suspects wanted for Wednesday's fatal shooting fled in a stolen 2018 black Dodge Charger, which was recovered shortly following the incident. Investigators believe it is a targeted shooting and say all potential leads will be thoroughly investigated. Catherine McDonald, Global News.
So I wanted to show both of those stories because they had a couple of different points in each one, but it also showed the bravery of this young lady speaking out against these potential extortionists. And as we know, the Lawrence Bishnoi gang has claimed responsibility. Now, in those statements, there were several things that really stood out to me, and that is we've known and we've reported, Angus, for some time about the extortion rings that were going on, that were targeting the Sikh community and others, the other minority communities. Now, they also went on to claim that the Peel Regional Police, of course, had, for anybody unfamiliar, that's a part of the Greater Toronto region. But in any event, they had started an extortion and criminal team to actually go after these individuals. But of course, we haven't heard a lot lately as to any successes. When we look at the totality of this case, of course, they were promised some level of security by the statements of the daughter that didn't materialize, and therefore they were left out on their own and left them at this greater risk of harm. And of course, we've seen the results. Taking this further, she also stated that her father was not the only one, which we're aware that this is an ongoing issue with the extortion problem. But she also stated that other businesses have been shot at as well, which should be doubly alarming considering that there was an active threat against this individual. When you take that in combination with the fact that when they called 911 after her father was shot and lie in the parking lot, they took 5 minutes approximately to actually take them off hold to answer the call. Those 5 minutes could be very potentially life-saving in a dire situation. We know that in a lot of cases that the injuries are substantial, but even added to that, the time delay allows shock to come in, and shock can be just as devastating to the human body and a cause of death than the bullets themselves. So again, that 5-minute delay is definitely a very, very concerning issue. Now, we need to look at areas in which the national initiatives, they are looking at increasing the ability and the funding to go after gangs and criminal activity across Canada. Now, one of the solutions could be that the city of Surrey here has transitioned to a local city police force, whereas for many decades they've been under the protection of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Now, with the national force freeing up officers from street officers right through to detectives in various bureaus, I would suggest or make recommendation that they look seriously at taking some of these officers who have been freed up and actually forming a national task force to crack down on this. A lot of the related extortion and threats go unconnected because there are so many different regional police forces handling such cases. They do get entered into a national database, but are they actually being looked at as a totality across the nation? Or are they just being repetitively investigated by multiple forces in small regions? So I think that definitely to increase a national task force against the criminal gangs and organized crime would be a huge benefit to the people of Canada. And I know that there are some task force already, but adding those additional resources, I think, is paramount to looking to solve this problem. Once again, we do offer our condolences to the family, to the friends, and to the co-workers of this individual, and our thoughts are with you. If there's any friends or family that want to speak out or want to share their thoughts of the victim, by all means, please feel free to do so within our comment section or to send us any images or videos that you would like us to air in order to honor the life of this dedicated member of the Sikh community, Angus.
Yes, I mean, it's a terribly tragic story, but of course it does highlight some very, very big issues going on, not just in Canada, but actually across the diaspora. One of the, I would say, one of the more successful exports from India has been organised crime. It's a national shame, yet another national shame from India. And normal Indians, let's say, are very industrious, decent people. But unfortunately, India has also exported this huge wave of organised crime around the world. And the Bishnoi gang is just one large, significant member of that criminal diaspora. And of course, they come with, certainly the Bishnoi gang specifically come with two primary agendas. The first, of course, being to make as much money as quickly as they can. That's usually the main driver of crime. But secondly, they have a political aspect to this, and that is, of course, they hate Khalistanis. They hate the Khalistan campaign, and they are quite happily used, clearly, by the Indian intelligence agencies to act as proxy weaponry against the Khalistan campaign. And by that, look at various victims, including this poor gentleman who was murdered because partly he was a Khalistan campaigner. So, but I think, yes, it is a national shame, and Canada and North America as a whole, clearly, I do know, are fighting this. They are, obviously, they're aware of it. Indeed, I think last year the FBI sent out a very specific warning, one of its communiques to the United States population, saying we are aware, and you must continue to be aware as a population, of Indian organised crime, and we are aware that extortion is happening from these Indian criminal syndicates. They are targeting particularly the Sikh community. I know, I think California particularly was targeted by these gangs, and particularly the Bishnoi gang, but certainly the FBI are aware of it. And it's and I think one of the comments that I think one of the family members said that their complaints were not taken seriously. I don't know if that's true or not, but what I would say is that law enforcement across North America do take this seriously. They are fully aware of it, and they are trying their best to clamp down on it. However, clearly it is so extensive, it is so prevalent that they just clearly cannot nip it at the root. They are struggling to really stop this influx, this massive influx of criminal gangs coming from India. And of course, their main modus operandi is extortion. And clearly that's what they've done to this poor gentleman. He tried to resist and he's unfortunately paid the consequences. I think the other issue there, of course, is this systemic failure. They telephoned for help, 5 minutes to answer the phone. That is a separate issue. That is probably, again, the good old lack of funding, lack of resources issue. Why didn't they answer the phone? Probably because there's just not enough people answering the phone. But that's a whole other issue. That's not specific to the Sikh community. It's not specific to this particular case. It's just likewise, it is a systemic failure. And that is a separate issue that certainly does need addressing, because, of course, as you said, James, lives could literally be saved in those critical 5 minutes if somebody answers the phone in time. So, again, a tragic story, but the key highlights here is Indian organised crime spreading across North America, targeting the Sikh community, and the Sikh community needs, obviously, firstly to be aware of it, but secondly to pressure the government to do something about it, James.
Absolutely, Angus. So it's a tragic story on many levels, and one that we will definitely be following up on and keeping a close watch. We'll bring more details as they become available, but we'll also be reaching out to the emergency response services to find out about the delay, if this is a normal response or if it was an anomaly in the system, and we'll bring you what details we can. Now, moving on. Last night, I misquoted a date. I said July the 7th. We had an announcement coming up about an event on July the 7th, but it's actually June the 7th. So my sincere apologies. It just a slip of the tongue, I guess. But on June the 7th, again, June the 7th, at 10 a.m., there is going to be a sovereignty rally, and that is in San Francisco. And this is in memory of the martyrdom of Sri Guru Arjan Dev Ji and the June 84 genocide victims, and remembering that event. But also just really highlighting the need for a Sikh sovereign nation. This will take place in San Francisco on Saturday, June the 7th, and it will start at 10 a.m. on 2nd Street. I believe the address is 88 2nd Street, and the rally will proceed over to the City Center Plaza. Once there, from approximately 2 p.m. to 4 p.m., there will be guest speakers. There will be others, activists, human rights activists, as well as, a lot of people from the Sikh community and local community as well, who will speak up and share their thoughts and other ideas, as well as remember all of those lost in the genocides of 1984. We will keep reporting on this and reminding you of this very important event. We hope that you will join those people in California to make a trip to the event to help memorialize and remember, as well as to speak out for sovereignty for the Sikh nation. Again, this is on Saturday, June the 7th at 10 a.m. in San Francisco, Angus.
Indeed. So if you're in California, get yourself down there to that event. It'll be an extremely important event to attend. So thank you for that, James. Right, let's move on to my first story. And yes, this war between India and Pakistan bubbles on. It continues, and it fortunately has turned away from a physical war into this continuing propaganda war, this war of words and slinging all sorts of stories at each other, particularly playing out in the international media. And interestingly, Pakistan yesterday released a 20-page dossier containing what they claim is irrefutable evidence of India's aggression and lies, and outlining historic success of Marka-e-Haq and Banyanum Mahsus, as well as Delhi's false flag operations in Pahalgam. And so basically, it's just another massive sort of, I suppose, a nuclear launch against India, news-wise or propaganda-wise. But basically, this dossier details all sorts of examples of how India have actually lied in the lead up to and during the few days of that conflict. And according to the sources, and it's reported right across Pakistan media, particularly Indian media, have slightly picked it up, but of course, unsurprisingly, have sort of tended to ignore it or play it down. But the international community has also sort of picked up on it, and I'm sort of cherry picking a few sort of comments from it. But according to various sources, the dossier is based on satellite images and a compilation of fake news campaigns across social media. And the dossier exposed, unsurprisingly, the fake news spread through the Indian media and the research and analysis wing's social media networks across these huge Hindutva bots and online army to create this, what they claim was war hysteria. And of course, we did see that right across social media, particularly this drumming up, this jingoistic, this nationalistic, let's attack Pakistan. And we showed examples of that at the time. And the Indian media launched this wave of false propaganda against Pakistan immediately after the Pahalgam incident, that incident where 26 tourists were killed. And the evidence of international media and local Indian politicians and civil society raising questions about that operation were right across the media, claiming that it was indeed this false flag operation. And that's detailed more in the dossier. Now, the executive summary of the dossier states that the Indian authorities lodged an FIR, that's a first information report, against Pakistan within just 10 minutes of the original incident, without any credible evidence or investigation. And it also said that Pakistan offered a joint investigation under a neutral third party to obviously investigate what happened, who was behind this dreadful attack in Pahalgam, but it was rejected by India. Why did India reject an independently overseen investigation? That's raised huge red flags across the world. The dossier also said that it's evident that the Pahalgam attack was, of course, a false flag operation, and the various ministers in Pakistan have claimed this publicly. And they claim it was orchestrated by India and deliberately exploited it as a pretext to justify India's aggression. Of course, that attack on Pakistan, serving internal political objectives. In other words, it was vote bank politics, as we call it, rather than genuine security concerns. And based on a completely fake narrative and using Pahalgam as a false flag operation, India then targeted all sorts of locations in Pakistan, including, it lists loads that it did, including sending drones across. It killed dozens of civilians, including women and children. It said that the Pakistan military's response was brutal yet measured, as per international laws of self-defense, as it only targeted military locations in India. And it further says that Pakistan is a victim of Indian state-sponsored terrorism. And again, this interesting irony comes up again, where, of course, India is always the first to stand up and accuse Pakistan of state-sponsored terrorism. Again, it aligns with India's continued claim that Khalistan is our terrorists. In other words, India's always spraying around these accusations of terrorism. You're all terrorists. When actually the real state sponsor of terror appears to be India itself, as here accused by Pakistan. And Pakistan actually explains how it executes its state-sponsored terrorism by using proxies operating within and outside Pakistan. And again, we've just been talking about the Bishnoi gang, another state proxy of the Indian government, spreading out state-sponsored terrorism. Now, the dossier asserts that Indian society, politicians and even common citizens have even themselves labelled the Pahalgam incident a grave security failure. But instead of accepting the truth, India banned several YouTube and Twitter channels, exposing its false narrative. Yes, here we are again. So whilst even people within India were saying, hang on a second, we're a bit suspicious about this attack. We think it is a bit all too convenient. The fact there's 500,000 Indian troops, massive security in J&K, and yet these gunmen can just walk in, kill 26 people and walk out. So it really does paint a picture of either it's a massive, embarrassing, shameful security failure, or more in reality, the evidence does seem to point at being a false flag. And yet anybody who stands up and points this out, particularly in India, never sees the light of day. They are banned. But also all channels from outside of India are not allowed to broadcast in India. They're blocking all these Twitter accounts, all these YouTube accounts. What has India got to hide? One only has to ask that simple question. And then the dossier then continues that Pakistan launched this Operation Banyan Mahsoos in its defence, which shattered India's war ambitions, it claims, and about losses inflicted on India. It does claim that 5 Indian aircraft and large unarmed aerial vehicles were confirmed shot down, something that India is still yet to admit. Why will India not admit this? The downed Indian warplanes included 3 French-made Rafale jets, a MiG-29 and an Su-30, and on top of those, 84 drones. And then on top of that, S-400 battery systems at both Adampur, that's now where Modi has located his nuclear-armed jets. So these artillery batteries at Adampur and Bhuj were effectively neutralised. BrahMos storage facilities at Beas and Nagar were destroyed, which had themselves fired missiles on Pakistan. And the various logistics and support sites were also destroyed around Poonch. A military command headquarters, which helped plan the operational killing of the Pakistan citizens, included 10 Brigade and 80 Brigade at KG Top and Nowshera. And then as part of the dossier, they did include a really well, I say it's funny. It's, it basically is and I'm showing now this list, or this list of photographs of individuals who were seen on social media and mainstream media actually questioning the narrative of the Indian government, actually questioning the fact that maybe the Pahalgam was a false flag operation, questioning India's whole narrative, the Indian government's narrative on this. So that Pakistan has said, look, all these people, these are Indians who are pointing out the fact that this whole operation was designed specifically as a deliberate aggressive act on Pakistan. And these questions that have been raised have deliberately tried to be buried by the mainstream media. But these people have still managed to speak out against it, and Pakistan have listed these. What is also interesting, and I think very telling, and not actually in the least bit unsurprising, is that social media, the right-wing social media, have picked up on this particular part of the dossier. It's spread around social media like wildfire, and all the comments are saying, okay, so now thanks for displaying this. Now we know who the traitors are in India. And of course, these people are now receiving death threats, all these individuals. And they're very serious journalists, they're investigative journalists, they're academics. These are very highly respected people, intelligent people who are just questioning this nonsense mainstream narrative coming from the BJP government. And yet now they are facing death threats and all sorts of threats online. And we're talking about these, they need to face these unknown gunmen, this often used phrase to saying that RAW, the intelligence services of India, should assassinate these people. This is what India has become. This is what is happening in India, is that anybody who dares question the narrative of the government, and this has reminiscences of Nazi Germany in the 1930s, is that anybody, any formally respected intelligent academic or politician or whoever who spoke up against the authoritarian regime was quietly disappeared. They were hauled in front of courts on trumped-up charges. They were either imprisoned or they were simply assassinated. And this is what is happening in India. It is, again, a very concerning thing for India as a nation. So there you go, James. There's a Pakistan biased piece of evidence, they claim, a dossier which they claim contains all the what they call is the lies of India, the propaganda lies of India. But sadly for India, and I think again, we touched upon this in yesterday's story. Who is it that the world community believes? They're not believing India. They're not believing India's side of the story. They are tending to believe Pakistan's side of the story. And again, so many red flags from the Indian side. Why did they deny an independent investigation, or at least an investigation into the Pahalgam attack, jointly investigated by both Pakistan and India, but overseen by an independent third party? So therefore, there could be no doubt that it would be completely fair and just an investigation. Why did India prevent that happening? One has to ask that question, James.
Absolutely, Angus. And I mean, this is such a big story. Now, we also know that there is a lot of propaganda and misinformation that comes out of Pakistan as well. But in terms of this situation, I tend to lean towards believing Pakistan and going with that narrative. When we look at the reasons why, it's very simple, because I look back at incidents, whether that was Operation Blue Star, whether that was the potential Operation Shanti, whether or not that was, the genocides of 84, the violence in the 1980s and 90s. When is the world going to wake up and realize that the BJP, Narendra Modi, and the India government is placing all of these false flag activities in order to subjugate their enemies or their rivals to the violence that they feel what they want to inflict? India also wants to utilize these events in order to go after them financially and through other means by pressuring the international community to stand on side with Modi and his government. And I think that it's at that point now where the international community is saying, no, you're not being transparent. You are not being open to our investigators and giving us transparent information that we need to make a very educated and informed decision on whose side we take and who we back in terms of trying to create a peaceful resolution at the end of the day. And I think that is why the world is finally saying, no, sorry, India, we can't take your word for it. You've lied to us too much in the past. We know that. But we need these transparent and third-party oversight to investigations so that we can actually get to the truth. And that is where we are, Angus. Another sad day for truth in the world.
Indeed, and as Jaskaran Sandhu, the founder of Baz News, highlighted on Twitter just a few days ago, India has lost credibility. India's just pushed it too far with its propaganda, and it's all countries are guilty of promoting a propaganda, let's say a government-led narrative. But India has just gone several steps too far, and this is why they've lost credibility, particularly in the international community. The international community just don't believe what India says anymore, and that unfortunately for India is meaning they are losing this war. They are losing this propaganda battle. So. Now, talking about propaganda, James, let's move on to my second story. And no, propaganda is the wrong word. That's too strong a word. But I would say there's been an investigation, a report released over recent days by an organisation called the AANHPI, which is the Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islands organisation. They are a coalition of over 40 separate organisations that basically represent the various Asian communities in North America, or particularly the United States. And that, of course, does include everybody from the Pacific Islanders all the way through to the Chinese and, of course, the Sikh community. So the Sikh community does fall within this umbrella, but it's a very wide umbrella. And as a result of that, they've produced a report where they've reviewed the first 100 days of the Trump administration and how his policies and his administration's policies have impacted the various communities. Now, of course, I'm reading through this, and it's a very long report, so you'll be relieved to know I won't go through the whole report. But there is a very brief summary. I'll just quickly summarise, and even the summary itself is very lengthy, so I'll flash through the summary just to highlight some key points. But what I would say about this report, I think there is a slight, not even a slight, more than a slight political agenda here. It's very clear that the authors of this report, I think there's a very clear anti-Trump element threaded through this. So I'm trying to sort of filter out the political side of this and just try and actually get the genuine facts here of how particularly the Sikh community have been affected, because of course it does refer to even the Chinese sector. It's there's no secret that Trump's administration is very anti-Chinese, and so of course the Chinese community in America are suffering under the first 100 days. There's no question about that. So again, as we go through this, I'm looking specifically at the Sikh community. But their report breaks down into 11 main areas, and I'll just flick through some of them, just to highlight them. Destruction of civil society is one of the main ones. And they point to the fact that Trump, the administration, has what they claim is erasing historical records. But what he has done specifically, he's fired the National Archivist. Now, a lot of these actually are just simple cost cutting. They're not specifically racist. They're not targeted at specific communities. They are just literally just simple efficiencies and cost cutting. We do know that is a massive part of the Trump administration. So a lot of these have spun a bit of an angle on this to try and say, oh, look, you're targeting us. But in fact, it was just as a result of actually just simple cost cutting. And this is one of them. Now, violating the privacy rights of Americans through the Department of Efficiency, government efficiency. This is something that Elon Musk was heavily involved in, and they claim that as a result of his cost cutting, it's violating the rights of various citizens. And likewise, it spreads into the firing, of course, of hundreds of thousands of federal workers. And of course, that impacts everybody, not just the Asian communities and the Sikh communities. Threatening the legal system, private law firms and non-profit organisations. The administration actually issued orders attacking and scrutinising stakeholders who've been critical of the administration. I don't know if that's true or not, but they claim it is. And avoiding transparency by firing inspector generals and the Office of Special Counsel. Well, again, this comes down to cost cutting. They have fired lots of managerial level peoples, which again, this report spins into the fact, well, you're clearly targeting the minority communities over this. A large part is dedicated to the housing and economic justice element, which includes gutting the Department of Housing and Urban Development, etc., etc., etc. That's not so relevant. The education parts of this are relevant. Abolishing the Department of Education. Well, again, it's back down to efficiencies, firing federal workers, and steps to close down the Department of Education, including key offices and functions. Well, again, that's not specifically targeted at the minority communities. It is a bit more of a general thing, but it does have an impact, of course, on the community. But here's an area where it does impact directly, and this is a valid criticism. Attacking the DEI, this diversity, equity and inclusion programs. This is a huge part of the Trump administration's promise, and part of the reason they were elected is that this woke agenda, this DEI agenda, which is where people from minorities are deliberately promoted, not based on merit, but purely through the colour of their skin or their ethnic background, their religions or whatever. And this is something actually I think I totally agree with. I think DEI is in itself, in principle, it's a great idea. In practice, it is not a good thing. We've seen this particularly here in the UK as well across Western nations. DEI has promoted people not based on merit from ethnic backgrounds, but basically because of the colour of their skin. This is patronising, in my opinion. This is patronising to those communities. It is saying to these communities, we're going to give you these big roles. We don't care how good or bad you are at the job, but we're going to give you this big role because of your ethnicity. That's not the way to treat these minorities. We treat these minorities as equals. That is the whole point of how we should be running any organisation, any company, any society, is that we are all equal, despite the colour of our skins, our religions, whatever. That is what really the DEI programme is trying to attacking this DEI programme. And of course, this report has spun it saying, oh no, you're attacking minorities. No, that is not what this is about. So that's my personal spin on this report. Placing Asian American, Native American, Pacific Islanders serving institutions at risk, this anapisis at risk, by destroying the Department of Education. They're claiming that the organisations that are standing up for minority rights are therefore at risk. Yeah, I think that is a valid criticism. The health area, there's various parts on that. Immigration, though, this is a big one. Barring birthright citizenship. Now, again, this is a big area that Trump was voted into office about. Is that he said, yeah, we will close the doors to America. We will make it harder for people to come to America to become citizens because we've had enough immigrants. And that, again, was a key tenet of his administration. So unsurprisingly, yes, this has, of course, put the backs up of this organisation. Preventing US-born children of immigrants from obtaining US citizenship. Yeah, he's made it harder for children to become citizens. Expanding immigration vetting, pushing for further exclusion, escalating and expediting deportations and enforcement. Yes, of course, James, we've talked a lot about those forced deportations, pretty brutal deportations. And back again to civil rights. Violating First Amendment protections to free speech, well, that could be or couldn't be. Attacking the trans community, yeah, he's been very clear about that. And rolling back reproductive rights, again, that whole hot potato about abortion rights, which I'm not going to go into. Civil rights, weakening civil rights enforcement at the Department of Justice. Potentially reviving the China Initiative. Again, this is very specific to Chinese citizens, people from the Chinese ethnicity. Unsurprising, it doesn't affect the Sikh community, but yeah, again, this highlights how this report is actually is looking at all minority rights, including the Chinese. And again, that's no secret that Trump is certainly clamping down on Chinese infiltration of the United States. And attacking voting rights, an executive order requiring documentary proof of citizenship is necessary in order to register to vote. Well, again, we've had that same debate here in the UK. I believe it is a good idea. It basically stops electoral fraud. That's what it's all about. Unfortunately, it is people from various minority communities that are affected by this, but it's not a specifically racist issue to do this. It's purely to try to prevent electoral fraud. And again, we've had the same issue here in the UK. And about the visibility of the communities and the organisations like the AANHPI, again, the White House, they claim, is making it harder for these organisations to be more visible. Again, they talk about attacking the DEI, raising AANHPI history. They claim it's all down to cost cutting. So they're saying this cost cutting is making it harder for history, archiving, and educating people about minority backgrounds and the suffering through these governmental cutbacks, and then undermining access to specific languages. The final section goes on the environment, which I won't bother talking about. So basically, James, this report, as I say, I think it is slightly, there's a big spin on this, and it's trying to twist a lot of these governmental policies into saying, look, you're specifically targeting us. No, I think a lot of these are just general governmental cost cutting. That is what Trump was elected into office over, that he will make massive savings in government spend, because of course the US government is absolutely monumentally, mountainously, there are not enough superlatives in the dictionary to describe how deep in debt America is. Not just America, but most Western nations. But Trump has said, look, we have got to do something about this. We've got to cut this massive national debt, and the only way to do that is firstly to tax more and to spend less, and this is part of his spending less. Unfortunately, and a lot of this is genuine, is that yes, minorities have suffered under this, but so has the rest of America. So a lot of this report is about that. But yes, there are elements about immigration particularly that directly affect the Sikh community. Yes, unfortunately the Sikh community are going to get impacted by a lot of those anti-immigration policies. That's what he was elected for. He does a lot of good, but yes, unfortunately there is that negative side to his policies that are going to affect the Sikh community. So there you go, James. First 100 days in office. I would say this is a slightly overcritical report. You and I very clearly differ on Trump's, or opinion of Trump's, but I would say on this one, yeah, I think some of these criticisms are valid. I think there's a lot of spin there as well, James.
Absolutely, Angus. And I mean, it's no secret that I think it's the most inept, corrupt, and unqualified administration in the history of the United States. But on this, I must say that, yeah, it is not specific to any racial group, any minority. It is just a straight across the board as they take the actions against various organizations, against various government departments, and of course against various international programs that they've been funding for decades. And it is, I don't like what I see, but at the same time, I would not go to the point of saying that it is racially motivated on that end.
Indeed, and I think, and I do urge our audience, if you can be bothered, to read that report at least to get an idea of who this organisation is trying to highlight. As I say, there are definitely one or two valid areas in there that are a cause for concern. Right, James. On that note, let's move on to our comment section, and loads of great comments. I mean, thousands of wonderful comments have been received. Unfortunately, we don't have time. We could do a whole hour-long show on the comments because we had so many, and so many fascinating comments as well. So some great debates going on. Unfortunately, again, we don't have time to go into some of those discussions that have been threading online beneath some of the videos. So thank you to each of you who've contributed to that, and thank you for keeping it very polite. Of course, there's been lots of I would say barbs thrown backwards and forwards, but always in a generally speaking, a very civilized and relatively friendly fashion. So thank you to our audience for that. So we talked about, has there been a Sikh rebellion in the Indian army, or at least are there rumblings of something going on? Well, of course, we had lots of people saying yes, likely, But of course, quite a few people jumped in and said, no, absolute nonsense. And Pritam Singh says, a true Sikh will always stand shoulder to shoulder with our Hindu brothers and sisters. So this is actually a slightly ambiguous comment, basically saying, look, no, there's no way that Sikhs would mutiny in the Indian army. But alternatively, you could read this as saying, a true Sikh will always stand shoulder to shoulder with our fellows, our fellow human beings, whatever their background, certainly with Hindus, against injustice. So, but ultimately, I think the message here is that Sikhs will always stand up for justice, and they always will stand, as Pritam says, shoulder to shoulder with their fellow human beings as equals, and that's what matters. Oh, you there, James?
Oh, there we go. You're back. I lost your audio just for a split moment there, I think, as you were finishing up.
Sorry, James. I just handed over to you about saying Sikhs will always stand shoulder to shoulder with their Hindu brothers and sisters.
Absolutely, Angus, and they stand for what's right, and that, unfortunately, is something that we saw cost the life of a Mississauga businessman, but he stood for what he felt was right. He stood against injustice, and at the end of the day, that is a part of the Sikh way to stand up for everyone, not just yourself, but he stood up for his community and tried to protect them, and sadly, it came to that resolution, but it just is a very clear indicator that they will stand up in light of any threats there, Angus.
Well, Nindikan was totally unambiguous and say, look, the Sikh army is loyal to India. 95% of us Sikhs do not want Khalistan. Stop this nonsense. This almost made Critics' Corner, actually. But I thought, no, let's not give them that humiliation. Well, that's a big question. No, we won't stop this nonsense because clearly there are a very large percentage of Sikhs who are pro-Khalistan. And these rumblings about Sikhs within the army, well, evidence is emerging that there are Sikhs in the Indian army who are not happy serving India as a nation. So unfortunately, all we're trying to do is report the truth. I don't know where you're based in Indican, but if you're based in India, then clearly you'll probably only be receiving one side of the whole narrative. All we're doing, we are merely the messengers. We are finding evidence to support. Firstly, the Sikhs, there is a massive evidence of support for Khalistan amongst the Sikh community. Otherwise, why do we exist? Why does this channel exist? Why has the referendum seen hundreds of thousands of people right across the world voting for it? Why is Amritpal Singh in prison, despite the fact he was elected by an overwhelming majority on a pro-Khalistan ticket? Unfortunately, Nindikan, the evidence out there does seem to support the fact that Sikhs do want Khalistan, or at least a large percentage do, James. So unfortunately, we can't stop this nonsense, Nindikan, will we, James? We will continue, God willing, to broadcast as long as we can, because people need to know the truth.
Absolutely, Angus, and let's face it, if it is truly 95%, I don't understand why there's such a fear of holding a fair and democratic referendum. It's just a no-brainer in my world.
Yeah, that is exactly the point, James. And Nindikan, why don't you campaign for Punjab to hold a referendum? Prove us wrong. Show us that we're wrong. It can only be proved that we are wrong through a referendum. Prove that 95% of Sikhs don't want Khalistan. It's very simple. You can get rid of us overnight by holding a referendum. Mr. Modi can get rid of us overnight by holding that referendum. Why doesn't he hold the referendum? That's the key question. Abdullah, though, wraps it up very unambiguously, likewise says, free Palestine, free Kashmir, and free Khalistan, James. It's all about freedom. Hear, hear.
Absolutely. We can't say it any better than that, Angus.
Now, Gagan Deep Sidhu says, look, Punjab was a country before 1947, and now we need our independence back. Absolutely right. But one of our current critics, Mr. Super Azad, wades in and says, no, mate, you really need to study history. Punjab's never been a country. India is the country, and you need to honour and respect India, our Bharat, like our 10 Sikh gurus did. All the best, nicely put. But Gagan Deep Sidhu comes back with a massive response, saying, oh, no, you need to look at your history again. There was no India before 1947. Of course there wasn't. There were small kingdoms with different rulers. And don't talk about our gurus or religion. I can go down that route and you won't like it. So absolutely. So I think Mr. Super Azad really needs to understand that, India is only a recent construct. It was the British Empire before it, again, was an artificial construct, bringing together all these different disparate communities and cultures under the forceful banner of the British Empire. But then it was handed to the Brahmins of India, who then have continued effectively this colonialization. So India is only a new construct. It didn't exist before 1947. So unfortunately, your history there is slightly wrong, James, is it not?
Absolutely, Angus. And I mean, looking at the next comment, that looks far off as well. I'll let you get into that one.
Indeed, and unfortunately Shahzad betrays his or her, sadly to say, ignorance, because the whole of South Asia belongs to India. The land of Pakistan came from India and belongs to India, period. Well, unfortunately it doesn't, Shahzad. I don't know if you studied history at school, but you really need to understand, because what you'll claim is India actually owns Pakistan. Well, Pakistan could validly, under your argument, say, no, India belongs to Pakistan, because we both were the same country before. So actually India should be part of Pakistan according to your logic. But unfortunately, of course, your logic is deeply flawed, is that the whole area, if you go back pre-1947, belonged to the British Empire. Well, I say it belonged, it was controlled by the British Empire. It, of course, does belong to the indigenous people of India, those disparate cultures, and that is what those cultures are demanding these days now. Is, look, can we please now have our regions back? Can we please have our own little countries back? We want our own independence and to run our own affairs. So rightly, as you said, James, I think Shahzad Puri Sunil Saram needs to go back to school and learn his history lessons. So, final set. And Sandeep Singh, good morning, and a jolly good morning to you. I do like to pick up these random comments. We do have the odd person who drops into our comment section just to wish us good morning and wish everybody a good morning and a good day. Well, Sat Sri Akal to you, Sandeep Singh, thank you for joining us, and to all of you, even if you don't comment, thank you for joining us as always. And Aman Saini says, right, James, I love this. This I was almost going to call flattery corner, because of course we do get some lovely comments from our audience. And the next two really made me laugh. Thanks to both handsome men, James and Angus. Good job. And that we should actually become Sikh Sardars. Well, I don't think I've been called handsome before, but I will take that as a compliment, James.
Absolutely, but I'm going to send this viewer a free bottle of lens cleaner for his screen, so...
But even better, and Harji Rosha manages to even trump that one by saying, greetings, I think you both are geniuses. Don't be shy if you disagree with me. But I wonder sometimes as to who is a greater genius between you. If you know the answer, then please let me know. Waiting the curious one. Well, bless you, Harji Rosha. I've certainly never been called a genius before, but I will take that, James.
Absolutely, and I'll say that Angus is the bigger genius here, because he has to put up with all the editing. Even after my little kerfluffles on air, he's got to fix them. So definitely give that one to Angus.
Bless you, but unfortunately I cannot accept that one. I think we'll call that one a draw, James. And the final comment goes to Mohammed Saeed. And again, this is interesting because we are getting more and more people watching from Pakistan, and welcome to our Pakistan viewers. Sikhs should have their own country. I am a Pakistani American. Oh, sorry, beg your pardon, you're Pakistani but based in America. I'm a Pakistani American. This will be good for Pakistan to have a buffer zone. Yeah, absolutely. I think even people on the Pakistani side realise that this suggestion of a buffer zone, basically the country of Khalistan, should form this narrow strip of land from stretching from China all the way down to the Indian Ocean, forming this buffer zone between Pakistan and India. And of course, everyone's a winner out of this. Pakistan win because it keeps that belligerent India, that aggressive India, from its door. It instead has the friendly nation of Khalistan on its border. Likewise, India wins because it has the friendly nation of Khalistan on its border, keeping Pakistan back. And of course, what it claims are Pakistani terrorists. So there you go. Everyone's a winner, James, in our solution.
I think it's a wonderful idea, Angus, and I think that it's one that definitely could bring a lot of stability, peace, and leadership to the region.
Indeed, it will do. And of course, not least of all to the Sikh community, who will actually be the greatest winners of Khalistan. And we will continue to fight for that solution, because we believe that is the perfect long-term solution to bring peace and prosperity and, of course, democracy to that region. But on that note, James, we must bring Perspectives to a close for another day. Please don't forget to keep those comments coming in. There's been some fabulous comments, as I said. Do keep them coming in. Do keep contributing. We very much enjoy going through the comments and reading them and, of course, talking about them afterwards. Don't forget you can message us directly at message@satlogetv.com if there's anything you'd like to bring to our attention directly. But that is it for another day. Thanks so much for watching Perspectives. It is a goodbye from me. It is a goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone.
You have, of course, been watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.